The media has their own agenda and they're not going to let you see anything more than they want you to see. So you could tell that WW, he was letting people in, he had this whole show going on, but he wasn't really letting people in. He was just showing them what he wanted to show them. You could see the whole way through the movie, he was in control. He was moving and negotiating everything. Welcome back. We've got another movie analysis for you here at St Rose of London. So let's get into it. The movie I'm looking at today is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I use movies to gauge what the public is thinking, how they're feeling. I like to uncover the hidden messages and the deeper meanings for you. So I'm going to share today. Let's get straight into it. So, you know I've got my notes, so you know it's serious. Let's go. So in the beginning, there's some things that I noticed straight off the back. And I just want to say, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the way they tell the story, it's supposed to make you think. So I thought it's going to be so obvious, like the whole story tells you what to avoid. But actually, once I started analysing, I just kept writing and writing. So let's get into it. He gave the golden ticket to 5 children. 5 represents change and transformation. Charlie lives in a slanted house. It's like literally lopsided. And the narrator says, you know, Charlie's not rich. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest. He's not the cleverest of children. And his family is not powerful, not well connected. But Charlie is the most lucky. So the slanted house, I was thinking, represents, you know, the family is barely surviving. You know when you break something and you're like, I can't afford to buy it back, I'm just going to put some tape on it. That's what, you know, the situation is in Charlie's house. And also, yes, you know, every journey is different. And Charlie, on the outside, doesn't seem to have much, but he's got the gift, you know, he's the most lucky. You can see at the beginning he has made this huge sculpture of the factory out of toothpaste tops, where his dad works in a toothpaste factory. And you know, he's just amazing. He has so much talent. He doesn't have the money to show it off, but he has it. You know, there's so many singers out there, artists that, you know, don't have the money, don't have the connections just yet, but they are incredible, and they use what they have and make wonderful art with it. So just a pointer. Main focus of the movie is family. And you know, Charlie, he lives with his grandparents, his parents. He's got the complete family unit, and although he doesn't have a lot, he does have love. The film looks at ambition, so it's trying to tell you the idea that nothing is impossible. You know, Charlie, it was looking very slim that he was going to get a golden ticket because he can only buy chocolate once a year. But he bought it, and then in the end, he owned the whole factory. So it shows that you have to take a chance, and you have to be in it to win it, and you have to have faith in what you're doing. This also leads into manifestation. You know, Charlie was just looking outside the factory. He took a deep breath, and he just walked away. And then he found a money note on the floor, and then he went in the shop, and then he got the golden ticket. So it shows you that if you really want something, you do, you know, you visualize it, you dream of it, it's always on your mind, then it will happen for you. Also, another life thing is that nothing lasts forever. So in the movie, it shows that Willy Wonka had a prince from India say, I want a huge parcel made out of chocolate. Everything has to be chocolate. And he was like, okay, I can do that for you. And he said, you know, this is your palace, but you better start eating the chocolate because it's not going to last forever. And he was like, no, my palace is going to stay here and stuff and stuff. And then lo and behold, there was a sunny day and everything started melting. So it's just saying nothing lasts forever. We can't be materialistic, because, you know, we have to really think about what's important. you know, and it's not a palace made out of chocolate just because you can. Yeah. And it also shows, you know, anything can be taken away from you at any moment. So enjoy it, but also keep your eyes on the prize, you know, focus on things that are really important. The movie talks about enemies. So you know, Willy Wonka was really happy about his chocolate and he was doing the inventions, and there was some little sneaky employees that were trying to steal his recipes and then go off and copy and, you know, try and make a business out of his ideas. So it's just saying, you know, be careful who's around you. You know, they could be working for you, they could be friends, they could be hanging out with you, but at the end of the day, maybe they don't have the best intentions. Now, everyone can do everything. So me, you, the person down the road, like, we could all have the same idea because there's nothing new under the sun. However, you know, the way the employees were doing it was very, very sneaky, and it's probably not in their employee contract. And that leads me to openness. Willy Wonka closed his factory because he wasn't happy about little sneaky people stealing his recipes, and, you know, a couple years later he had an epiphany. He was like, who am I going to give this factory to? Like, when I'm gone, where's this, what is this all about, who's this going to? So he decided to open up his doors. Charlie was always asking the right questions, okay? And he said, you know, why did you let us in? Why now? And you could see for WW, you know who that is, Willy Wonka, it was hard for him at first to let these children in. You can tell he didn't like parents, which we will get into. WW had his agenda, why he was letting people into the factory. So if you think about it, the media has their own agenda, and they're not going to let you see anything more than they want you to see. So you could tell that WW, he was letting people in, he had this whole show going on, but he wasn't really letting people in. He was just showing them what he wanted to show them. You could see the whole way through the movie, he was in control. He was moving and negotiating everything. That leads me into talking about the system. Charlie was wondering, does anyone actually work in this factory, before he got to see it? And he said, you know, there was conversation and they were saying, do you ever really see anyone go in or out? So no one is ever seen going in or out of the factory. So Charlie asks who's running the machines, and then it was replied, no one really knows, it's a mystery, right? So that's kind of like the system we have today. The elites, we never really see them, you know. Do we even know who's running everything right now? Question for you, I'll let you decide. I don't want to get in too deep. There's a speaker, David Icke, he talks a lot about this. So what WW is doing is he's creating situations, he's watching it blow up, and then he's offering a solution. So everything is planned. You know, the children were the first to catch on and say, how comes the songs already have the children's names in it if it wasn't planned? And, you know, WW just brushes past. For example, you know, the puppet show at the beginning, you know, there was a whole puppet show, you know, Willy Wonka, you know, and then the show goes on fire, and then he's literally just standing there like, great show, like, and they're like, aren't you meant to be on the chair? And he's like, no, then I wouldn't see what's going on. Like, this is entertainment, right? And then later on in the film, he's like, oh, this is my hospital for my puppets, it's new. And then he moves on. So clearly, he knows what's going to happen. He's created a situation, and then he's created a solution. But it's all entertainment, it's all fun and games for the people that are really in charge. I hope that reminds you of something that's going on right now, you know, the hospitals that appeared. It seems like all the way through, WW, or you can imagine him as the system, is trying to set traps and trying to set the kids up to fail. But however, WW is always leaving clues. So although he's created traps, he is saying, you know, don't do this and don't do this or this will happen. And he's just resting on the fact that the kids won't pay attention and they will fall into the traps. He's resting on that fact. So I guess, you know, there are ways to avoid traps, and I think the best way is just observing, questioning things, you know. Don't just go blindly and fall into the traps that are set for you. And another thing, lots of system things in this film. So there's a part where he gets into the elevator and he's like, oh, this elevator can go anywhere you want, just press the button. The lift is all glass, right? And it's kind of symbolizing that thing about the glass ceiling. So let's say if you're in your career and it looks like as a woman or as a black person, you can fly right to the top and be as good and, you know, be as good as anyone else. And then you start traveling up the top of your career. And then it comes to a point where you can see where you want to go. It looks like you can get where you want to go to, but there is something blocking you. So that something blocking you could be systematic racism, it could be sexism, anything negative that is not allowing you to progress how you should. Now, the thing that WW says is, you know, we are going to go to the up and out room or place. And it literally, guess what, was a glass ceiling that he broke through. And he was like, I've been waiting to do this, okay? And anyone who's extremely successful will tell you there's a moment where you just break through, you know, you make it. And it's maybe not as dramatic as WW said, but you know, the thing is you can get to where you want to get to. It just takes determination, and finally you'll break the glass ceiling. And hopefully there'll be a time and place in life where we won't have glass ceilings. But for now, it's just depicted in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's a lot of AI in this movie. So you can see that, you know, from Charlie's dad, he works in a toothpaste factory, and they replaced him. He lost his job because they found a machine that can put toothpaste lids on toothpaste, and he was no longer needed. So it's kind of like that technology, you know, stage that we're going through, and that's always developing. You know, there's machines that can do labor, like human labor jobs now, right? But I think it was quite nice and positive that he actually went back to the factory and fixed the machine that was meant to be doing his job. So although technology can take some jobs, it can actually create new jobs. And that's the positive outlook we want to take on AI so far. So there was 5 children, and they focused on the negative things, or they focused on greed, what greed can do. They focused on one that was really rich and spoiled, and she was very ungrateful, and it was always, I want, I want, I want. They focused on the overachiever, the one that has all the pressure from the parent, and the one that's very competitive, and, you know, the parent just wanted a mini-me. And we have the technology obsessed kid, and, you know, that just describes some of our younger generation. And we just have the, you know, Charlie, who was just lucky to be there, it seems. But actually it was in his life path to do that. So every kid obviously had the 4 other kids had their downfall. WW knew what their downfall was and created this whole plan or trip for them. Veruca, the rich and spoiled child, is kind of saying, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it and it might not be nice. And she realized, you know, daddy can't always save you from certain things, and she was never satisfied. And even at the end, she was like, oh, I want that. Like, she didn't learn her lesson, and some people don't, you know. The one that was always the overachiever, she was like a chewing gum champion, and then she tripped up because she had chewing gum she wasn't meant to have. But she was, even at the end of the movie, she was still chewing gum. No one learned their lesson at the end of the day. And that's kind of what life is, you know. We go through one thing, it might shock us, but then we'll carry on doing the same thing. So I think we really need to listen when we get our lessons, and we need to learn from them. Otherwise we'll keep getting into situations where life is trying to teach us how to live, and we just don't get it. So it's a very realistic representation of what actually happens in real life. Sometimes people don't change immediately, most times they don't. It also talks about health. There's a bit in the movie where they're on a boat and they're traveling through a tunnel and they're passing all these little, it looks like factories, but like little rooms. So it kind of reminded me of like our veins and, you know, our body inside, and how our body, you know, holds memory of what we eat. So you know that phrase, you are what you eat. So imagine like if the tunnels in the movie was like what it looked like inside, you know. There was even a very suspicious thing inside the tunnels, because it was all like whipped cream and stuff, which is actually food, which makes sense. But there was one thing called hair cream. Sometimes you don't know what people put in your food. Yeah, there's been like, I mean, remember the horse meat scandal? We all thought it was normal meat and it was horse meat. So that's just a little hint, you know, you have to be careful about what you eat and be good to your body, because your body stores the nutrition, or the unnutrition, that's not even a word, but you get what I mean. Your body stores all this information. Even the things that you put on your skin sometimes translates, you know. Just like how you have WW, who could represent, you know, a lot of things, including the system, we have the Oompa Loompas. Now, when the children first saw the Oompa Loompas, they were like, what's that? It's little people, right? And you can see, when people are not used to seeing people who are different from them, you can already see the reaction of the children. That's most of the times, you know, how they react. WW was like, they're imported from Oompa Loompa land. And dad of the techno kid was like, there's no such place, I'm a geography teacher, I know what I'm talking about. And again, WW's best tactic, brush it off, didn't hear what you said. And WW had some story, oh, it's a really sad country, they have jungles and I had to fight, you know, creatures and monsters. Typical. Like the common story, he was in search of things he can take, probably without permission. I guess it's just showing you real tactics again of how the system works. So he found out what the people of Oompa Land liked and what they, you know, worshipped, let's say, and that was the cocoa bean. And they could only find like maybe 3 cocoa beans every so often, and they really praised it and loved it. And then he was like, oh, I can give you what you want. I can make you work with cocoa beans all day, and guess what, I'll pay you in cocoa beans as well. So it's all a story. That's how, you know, people get tricked into being slaves. You know, that's how people get tricked. Even though this is a children's program, let's say, it's given you major clues as to how people get tricked, how the system works, how, you know, empires were built. This is big things. And I could also see, you know, the Oompa Loompas acting like the cells in our body. So when, you know, we eat something bad, or when we do something bad, it tries to, you know, help you out. So every time the kid make a wrong decision, the Oompa Loompas did their little dance, but at the end of the day, they were like, come here, like, we're gonna sort you out. And that's kind of like the cells in your body. You know, every cell loves you and wants to do the best for you. And lastly, we have the topic of unresolved trauma. This topic is quite big for a child to understand, but I think they portrayed it in a really good way. So, you know, WW was having flashbacks, and when people would ask him certain questions, he was already going through a period in his life where he was starting to kind of understand the situations and everything that was happening to him. WW's dad was a famous dentist, and his dad was always saying, you can't eat sweets, you can't have chocolate. And what did he do? He rebelled and he made the biggest chocolate factory in the world. Okay, in the movie. One nice scene is when he had a therapy session with his Oompa Loompa, and you know, it was cute because the Oompa Loompa didn't say anything, but he just started talking, and he was like, you know what, you're right, you're really good at your job. And it just highlights the fact that, you know, therapy is amazing, and just talking about it does so much for you in your understanding. You know, reflecting, self-reflection is amazing. Not always nice because you get some home truths, but it's good for you, it's good for your soul, it's good for your journey. The best therapies are when they understand the client has all the answers. You're just helping them get there. So I think that was really beautiful. In the movie, WW says, chocolate releases endorphins that replicate the feeling of love. And isn't it funny, because all his childhood, he didn't feel that feeling of love. And then in his adult life, he did something that can make him feel those feelings of love. So for WW, it was building something, you know, building a chocolate factory, and chocolate replicates feelings of love, and that's how he found his love over the years. But for other people, you know, sometimes they find love in not so good areas. So it's really important, you know, nice simple message of self-love. Yeah. Self-love, so that you don't get love in the wrong areas. I think it's really nice that the children were asking him questions, and it just shows that sometimes children can actually help us learn a lot about ourselves. You know, they ask very out there questions, they don't hold back, and you know, things that they experience or go through or say kind of makes us flash back to our own childhood. So I think it was really nice that they used children to do this. He didn't really, you could tell he didn't like parents, but that's because of his trauma, his unresolved trauma. The thing with unresolved trauma is obviously it holds, it doesn't go away. Even if you don't think about it for 10 years, it's there. So it's really important to work through it in a safe environment, maybe through therapy, or if you can, you know, do it through self-reflection, writing and everything. So it affects your behavior sometimes, and you can tell, like, he made a bubble gum that could taste like all the family meals, right? And so obviously because he didn't feel loved, he probably didn't have a lot of warm, nice family meals around the table. He created something in his life that can replace it. But really and truly, it's not the true replacement, it's just a replica, which maybe you don't feel, it won't satisfy you for life, basically. And I think what's really nice is Charlie helps him to really see his unresolved stuff. Charlie helps him to create a new family. Charlie helps him to see his dad and patch things up. And you know, when, it's such a nice feeling. When he went to see his dad, he was like, I don't think this is the right place. And it really was the right place, and he knew it. And he went to see his dad, and his dad had all his pictures on the wall. He just didn't know how to show love. Maybe that's how his father was with him, and that's the only way he knew how to love. So I think it was a really touching part of the movie. That is some of my analysis of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think it's an amazing movie and full of little gems. I mean, I just scratched the surface with this one. Like, share and subscribe so I can keep doing more videos for you, and I hope you enjoyed it and had lots